Hi, and welcome to this webinar and recording of using SAP Information Steward to kickstart data governance. Be presented by myself, Jon Green. I head up the innovation team at ENTOTA, responsible for the delivery of our accelerators and our solution offerings in the space of the SAP Enterprise Information Management product set. We will look to cover three specific areas in this recording. How does poor data quality manifest itself within your organization, and the 3 points of entry that we see of bad data getting into our SAP systems or other applications for that matter? What is SAP Information Steward as an application product, and where does it fit within the organization from a data governance and from a business process perspective? And also look at the 3-step process for kickstarting a data governance process using the Information Steward toolset. And we'll break that down into the 3 steps of gathering facts about your data or profiling, quantifying the pain that poor data has on your business processes, i.e. taking those facts and turning them into rules that we wish to apply, and then taking ownership and monitoring the trends of our data quality, i.e. setting up projects and scorecards to allow us to allocate those rule results, those bindings of those rule results, out to the individuals in the business who are going to be responsible for resolving the data issues, cleansing the data, remediating the data problems, and improving the business process that is affected by that data. So let's start with the poor data quality manifestation itself. How does poor data get into our application landscape? We've driven this down, I think, and what we've done is spent a lot of time thinking about how this data or how bad data can get into your application landscape. And we believe it enters through 3 overall areas that it can come in through. Those could be data migration, those could be application interfaces, or that could be data maintenance. And let me explain a bit about each of those processes. The data migration area, that could be through a true data migration, i.e. we're moving from a source application to a new target landscape. This could be through business process transformation, it could be a merger and acquisition, it could be a new SAP implementation, so you're actually implementing a new system or a new country is coming online within your existing SAP landscape. System consolidation or system upgrade could also be a trigger for that data migration effort. Application interfacing being the driving of data coming in from other applications, be those third parties or be those internal systems. The data can come in there, and that can be bringing in bad data, especially from third parties, where we need to then in place rules and validations to stop that bad data entering into our internal IT application landscape. And we've got our standard data maintenance processes as well. Whether that's a more complicated master data maintenance process, or whether that's just standard entry of customers, vendors, materials, those kind of data objects that we'd see within the business that are going to be maintained by data entry clerks or specific individuals within the business that are going to add those new records, modify or update those data records, the master data that supports your business. What it will do is have an effect on all of your business insight and your performance management. Without the correct master data, without the correct processes in place to ensure the quality of that master data, you're going to affect your ability to create insight into your business data and also to ensure that you are running optimal business processes through your performance management aspects as well. So we're looking to cover those 3 areas, and what we're going to cover here is really a process of how poor data quality manifests itself and then how we will visualize that within our IT application landscape and the effect we can then have on either providing a firewall to stop that data getting in, or initially to at least monitor and assess the size of the issue that we have within our IT application landscape. So moving on to the second point of the presentation. What is Information Steward, and what is its goal, and what does it do within the business? So Information Steward can be broken down. It basically, the concept is to provide data stewards or business users an ownership or a single environment where they can discover, assess, define, monitor and improve the quality of their enterprise data as an asset. If we break that down, discovery. The first step before we can do anything with our data quality is to understand the quality of the data as it is by profiling that data and understanding where the data exists in our landscape and the quality of the data in our landscape. The data profiling will give us the quality information. It will allow us to define which values we have, minimum, maximum ranges, lengths of strings, distinct patterns, or it could go further to do things like address cleansing. It could look at address validation. It could go further looking for uniqueness or dependency checks. All of these are different profiling tasks, and I will demonstrate those in the next few minutes within this recording. The metadata management aspect of the Information Steward tool allows us to look at the impact and the lineage that is taken in with our data sets. As we have a more and more complex enterprise information management or enterprise IT environment, you are going to have ETL tools, extract, transformation and loading tools, moving data around your organization. You are going to have one or more applications where data is going to either be a source or a target. You're going to have BI applications or business intelligence applications. And again, you'll want to see how all of these integrate from a metadata perspective to understand how data flows from the source through maybe a data warehouse out into your reporting and your business intelligence layer that your users are using. So that metadata management capability we'll touch on as part of this recording also. You have the definition phase, and the definition phase allows us to define business terminology, so create a taxonomy, and we'll touch on that a little bit just as an additional slide at the end rather than as a demonstration. What we're going to focus on are things like the validation rules and those cleansing rules. How do we assess the quality of our data, and how do we then create rules once we have assessed the quality of our data to allow us to monitor and assess it and look at trending of that data to see that it is improving over time. The third step is to monitor and remediate. How do we make the rules visible to the business, to the data stewards? Well, we create scorecards in this case, and that will allow us to monitor the data quality and to assess whether the data is improving over time and that the effect we're having in remediating that bad data is having a positive effect on the data sets. This can also be integrated into workflows for resolving that data. It could be as complicated as a full master data management solution, an MDM solution, or it could be a simple data key entry, or it could be a batch process that updates the systems. It will depend on volumes, it will depend on complexity and the business requirements. So let's look at these three facts, and I'm going to run through the three slides, the three steps we talked about at the start of the presentation, and then I will go straight into the demonstration and we'll log in and actually see those three steps in reality in Information Steward. So the first step is to gather facts about your data. Gathering facts about your data is a process of performing these profiling, be it basic profiling, mins, max, null values, unique, etc., or moving into the more advanced profiling, where we look at dependency values, redundancy checking, address validation to ensure that we have correct addresses against postal addressing files. But what it is, it's about gathering a snapshot, statistically a snapshot of the data, not what we think we have, but what we actually have. And we can work then to drive a discussion between the business and IT communities to assess that definition and to make sure everyone is aware of the understanding. If somebody is defining that one field is the key field for a certain object, then we want to ensure that it is fully populated, there are no null values, and all the values are unique. So we could assess that as part of a profiling step. We must perform this step before we get into any kind of deeper data analysis, because without it, we cannot understand the reality of the data we're working with. And then we must also use it as an identification for identifying data risk. If we were entering a migration project or an integration project, we can highlight where data isn't sufficient in quality or in size or in the quantity of the data we have. The quality of it isn't going to support the requirements that the business have for the migration, for the business process, or for the application integration task. Secondly, taking that profiled data, we need to move into the point of quantifying the pain that poor data has on our business process. And once we can quantify that, what we can do is create rules that have a business impact. And this is a key point that ENTOTA would emphasize. There is no point in creating data quality rules where there is no business value to that rule. There needs to be a monetary value for resolving the data quality. If all the rule is showing is some data is poor, but the business is running perfectly fine with that poor data, the business are not going to buy in to the idea of cleansing that data set. There needs to be a commercial value to the business in resolving that, because there will be an additional resource requirement, there will be additional tasks that need to be taken on in resolving that data and monitoring that data on a regular basis. So think about the value. Is there a quantifiable cost associated with it? And also, how should I organise and categorise my rules? And this will come into one of our recommendations that we'll talk about after the demonstration, because this is going to define how we set up our projects and our security within the Information Steward application to allow the business or the data stewards to visualise their scorecards and the data that they're responsible for. There's also a concept of looking at whether this is a one-time rule or whether it should be a wider indicator. And again, at ENTOTA, we'd recommend that we look at this for the wider indicators. Is there a rule that we're going to apply as part of a data migration that will live on past the migration to continually assess that nobody is now entering the incorrect data in the system directly after the data migration effort? There is no point in maintaining the quality of the data in a migration at that point in time and then letting it degrade again post the migration as we move forward with the standard day-to-day business process. And now we move on to the third step of the process, the taking ownership and monitoring the trends in your data quality. What we mean about that is about allowing the business or the data stewardship roles within that business that you've defined to take an ownership, to allow them to monitor and then effectively manage the data quality rules, scores, etc., and allow them to resolve the data issues that are found within your business. And by that, what we do is we place a scorecard or deliver a scorecard within Information Steward. That scorecard, and we will demonstrate how to build that in the next demonstration, is built on top of those first two, the data facts that we've talked about, and then the business rules that we've defined on top of those data facts. We then build those together and collate those together underneath specific key data domains, and we do that as well underneath a key data or underneath data dimensions. So for that, we would have key data domains, customer, vendor, material, etc. around there. And then within there, we would have dimensions like accuracy or completeness that we would then group the rules underneath. And it creates as an aggregated scorecard that allows us to drill down to the individual rules and then the individual bindings within that as well. It's allowing us to measure the effectiveness of our data improvements. We want to see the trends over time, and that's what the scorecard will show. Hopefully they're positive trends, but if they're not, also alerting us to the fact that we have a negative trend in the quality of our data. It's understanding how the data is underpinning a business process, so we align the business rules to a specific data or business process within the business, by highlighting that to maybe an order to cash or something around there, or maybe even an asset management process. We also look to ensure that the consistency is there in the master data across our business. We look to only include rules that are a business or cost relevant, and we'll talk about this as part of the recommendations that we move on to later on in this presentation and demonstration, because there's no point in building rules that have no business or cost relevancy to the business because they won't be owned. There is an additional resource requirement to manage this process. There needs to be a cost benefit to the business in doing so and applying those additional resources here. And for what we're talking about here at the end, this key quality indicators, it's a terminology that we use rather than just specifying rules. We want to turn them in. Like you have key performance indicators, we talk about key quality indicators. And actually the key quality indicators normally underpin those key performance indicators in the fact that if the master data isn't there to support those key performance indicators, then the accuracy of those indicators to your business are going to be affected. And we'll actually show some of that impact and lineage approach as well as part of the demonstration. So what I'm going to do is just highlight these three areas in one of our Information Steward applications that we have available to us. So I'm just going to log into the application now. And I'm going to bring this up. So the first screen we see, and I'm going to focus on this Data Insight tab. We'll cover what these additional tabs do in a later slide when we drop back into the PowerPoint. I'm going to open a project. And the project here basically displays the data that we're looking at. So here what I can see is the list of connections that I have available here. I have some views which I can create to filter data and to limit what a user sees in here. And I also have a connection to my SAP system and another connection system up here. All of these are configured and defined within an administration area within the Business Objects Enterprise application in the Central Management Console. So this is all defined already for the user. I've imported some tables. And in this situation, these are actually SAP tables. So LFA1 is my vendor basic data. And excuse the terms, but these are the actual table names in SAP. So I've added some annotations, which we can do as well at any point within the tool. And I'm going to focus here on my vendor basic data and my purchasing data. And if I just expand my basic data there, what I can see are my basic profile results. So here I'm in my profiling workspace. And this is what I mean by the step one, understanding your data. Here I'm looking at some basic results. What are my min and my max values? What are my specific string lengths that I've got within this? What are the value distribution that I've got here? So I can look at, say, country field here, which is land 1. And I can click on that and I can hyperlink. Anywhere that's blue, I can hyperlink and see the value distribution. So here I've got a load of nulls, which may be a problem for me. But I can also see that most of my data is coming from the US, then Germany, Canada, etc., etc. So we have this ability to understand our data. And in much more of a sense, we can understand the data rather than just viewing a large data sheet in an Excel spreadsheet. We can actually see the facts of our data visible to us and then drill down on those facts to understand them in more detail. If I just switch to the advanced profiling, I can also look at things like address validation. So I've done an address profiling step before actually cleansing the data. And I can see here I've got some terrible address data, 99.36 invalid data. But I can also look at this from, let's take an example of maybe uniqueness checking. So maybe one of the first things I want to do is assess the likelihood that we have duplicate vendors in my source application that I'm connected to. Well, the vendor number is unique and it's coming back and saying, yeah, that's absolutely fine. And the combination of vendor number and name is unique as well. But when I run the uniqueness check against the name itself, I can see I've got 48% are non-unique values. And I can then further drill down to see how many, the duplicate counts, I have of each name. So immediately this is now triggering my thought process to think I may have some duplicates, I may need to invoke a standardization and matching process, or at least an assessment of those to see with the business as to whether these are duplicate vendors that I want to cleanse as part of a migration, or whether I want to put in place a process to tidy them up, or to put a firewall in place as part of the application integration interfacing side. So you can see how we can drill down from these advanced profiling tasks to see the data, and I can export that to Excel, I can send it out, or I can write failed data out to a database and then build workflows, etc., to go and cleanse or resolve those data issues. Let's just move back to the basic tab, and I'm just going to now move from step 1 of looking at the data facts and moving into creating the rules. So here I'm just going to switch down to my purchasing data. So it's my purchasing view of vendors. And I'm going to work down here on EKOG, which is my purchasing organization. I've been led to believe from the business that they're expecting there to be only 2 purchasing organization values that are associated to all of my vendors. So I'm going to look at those value distribution, and I can see here that I have 76. It's not uncommon. What I have is an 80% distribution, or around 80% distribution of 1,000 and 3,000. Those are the 2 that the business said were the valid results that we should be expecting. So I'm going to highlight these 2. Using Control, I can just shift and select those 2. And I can say create the rule. And it is as simple as that for a basic rule. Yes, you can write more advanced definitions, absolutely. But automatically this has taken from a profiled result and created a rule for me. So I'm just going to call this valid purchasing organization. And I'm just going to save and close that down. Do I want to bind the column? The concept of binding is that a rule can be applied to multiple data sets. So I could be assessing the purchasing organization validity of any data here in this SAP system, or another system, or another suite of tables or views or flat files that I've got access to. So I can bind this column specifically here to my SAP data source, but I can also reuse that column and that rule that I've created elsewhere. So I've created my rule. What I now need to just quickly do, and let me just tidy up the screen again so we can see where we are, is I need to just move to my rule result. So I'm now going to, still in step 2, I'm going to highlight that table that I've just created that rule against and bound that one and say calculate score. And I'm just going to save and run that whilst I now look at building the scorecard. So that's now running in the background, and that's running on the back-end server that is now executing that calculate score. It's similar to a profiling task, but it's calculating the score result for the rules associated with that table. So I'm now going to drop into the scorecard. And as you can see, I've already got a partially built scorecard defined. Purchase orders and vendor are my key data domains. These are where you would place your business process objects. So customer, vendor, material, etc. would all be key data domains. And it depends how you want to split this down for your specific projects and for your specific business. So under vendor, I'm going to add a new dimension. And you can see there are these 7 industry standard data quality dimensions. I'm going to add accuracy because that's where I just created our new rule. I'll click save. and it's highlighting with this warning symbol that it's not complete. I haven't defined the rules or the bindings for this dimension. So I'll do that now. So I'm going to now highlight valid purchasing organisation and send that in. And then underneath there, I'm going to add the binding that I've just created and save that as well. So I've now added in my vendor accuracy valid purchasing organisation. So I'm quickly just going to check to see if that rule is completed, which it has. And now I'm going to switch to the business view of this scorecard that I've just created. So very quickly, I've now created this process, and I'm just going to have a look at the data as of now. And here we can see our new vendor score that's moved from just having the completeness value to having accuracy and completeness. And I can now drill down on that to look at my accuracy score, to look at my rule or rules that are making up that score. And I can specifically look at a binding and then at the failed data that's sitting below that. So here I can see the purchasing organisation values and the vendor records that are associated as bad data records. And I can send this out to the business. I can write this down to a database. And I can basically go and remediate that data as part of my process. So it's very quick to create these scorecards and have this visibility of the process. What we also have the ability to do, and I talked about it in an earlier slide around the metadata management, is understand that data quality score's impact on the further organisation. So here we can see the data quality value and the field element that I've bound the data quality rule to. You can see that actual field is used within a data services ETL process, and I can see it's being used in a select statement for the data flow DF vendor purchasing DIM. And I can see that it's being written to a specific data mart table. And then I can also, this has gone further out into the BI platform, I can now see that this is being used in a specific universe, which universe that is and where it's on which CMS server, what it's being used for in a specific report, and then the name of the report that it's affected. We could also go further to see the users that are affected by that specific report. So you can create this, and if there were multiple reports, you'd see a tree diagram sort of spreading out from this universe piece here. So it's very easy to understand from a perspective of a score over here what effect it's having on the business with regard to the business intelligence reports, whether that's going to SAP BW or directly to a business objects reporting suite. That can all be visible here and gives IT very much a picture of what the impact will be of any changes or the data quality scores. Likewise to the data stewards, they can understand the impact of that process there. So from a demonstration perspective, I just want to stop there. We've created step 1, we've looked at our data facts with profiling. We've done step 2 where we've created the rules from those data facts. And in step 3, we've opened up and created and added those rules into our scorecards to allow visibility for monitoring and the remediation processing to start. And we've also touched upon the impact and the lineage that's possible to understand the impact your data quality scores are going to have on your wider ETL or your wider business intelligence and performance management landscape. So moving back to the slides, what I just want to talk about here is some of the additional functionality that's in Information Steward. So here we've touched on metadata management, the ability to understand the lineage and the impact of the ETL flows, the business intelligence layer, whether that's Crystal reports, business objects, whether that's direct on a data mart database, or whether that's on top of SAP BW, all of those things are possible. And it allows us to understand the quality and the impact and lineage that's moving on and how those quality scores affect the items further down the impact line that is coming on. We have Metapedia, where it allows us to define and enrich the data and create a taxonomy or a categorization of our terms, of our objects and our items within our landscape, an IT landscape. So here I could create a taxonomy that had maybe the business process of sales and distribution, of which then customer becomes a sub-item or sub-term or category for that. And underneath there you could have further terms defining net profit, gross profit, etc., etc. And you can associate then all of those terms and categories to specific objects within your ETL, within your business intelligence, within your database layer, so that you can then search for customer and find everything that's related to customer and go and work through that and then understand the impact of that term and that definition. So Metapedia allows us to create these taxonomies and categorizations of the objects that you're defining within your metadata management suite and information that you have available there. The third piece that we see available here, Cleansing Package Builder, is allowing us to cleanse and standardize non-party data. Defining non-party data, party data would be customers, vendors, business partners, names of individuals or organizations, and address data. Non-party data would be an example of materials, products, items, etc., where there aren't dictionaries readily available. You will build your own dictionaries for standardizing descriptions, standardizing categorizations, taxonomies, etc. around that. So I could take a jumbled up description and pull out size, color, length, etc., quantity, etc. from that description and use that to categorize my materials and cleanse those as part of an application integration or migration effort. Lastly, I think what I just want to do is finish on deploying the solution and some considerations when deploying the SAP Information Steward application. As ENTOTA, we would recommend a number of processes. These are just a small subset of those, and these would be a set of questions and answers and a workshop we would run through with you when we're defining and working on Information Steward alongside you. So, security model definition. Do you have an existing governance structure to base the model on? If you do, great. But what we need to do is also look at it from a perspective of the way Information Steward exposes its scorecards, and the way it works is via the concept of projects, and you define the security of those projects within the central management console. So you need to assign and align the project structure with either your existing governance structure or to model your new governance structure around the concept of projects, key data domains within those, and then rules or data quality dimensions and rules within those key data domains. You need to understand the connectivity of the application landscape. Are you willing to directly access and put Information Steward directly on your production systems? Do you have a replica of your production system which you'd use to profile, or do you wish to stage the data out of your production landscape and then work in there with your profiling tasks? So it will depend on volumes, complexity, business criticality of the systems, and also the process you're going through. If you have control of those and it's a migration scenario, we would normally recommend you stage the data. So it's these kind of questions we would look through as to whether you do direct connection or whether you would then stage as part of the process. The remediation processes, we would look at, there's no point in having a rule defined if you're not going to be able to remediate and fix the data. Having visibility of bad data without an ability to resolve it is kind of pointless. So we need to look at the remediation processes. Yes, one, there needs to be a value, and we'll come on to that last, but two, there needs to be a process to resolve it. Whether that's manual data entry, i.e. going into the system and typing it and fixing it, whether that's even possible, whether you need a batch process to resolve the data because of the volumes, maybe it's a deduplication effort or a standardization effort, or whether it goes as full as creating a master data management process, whether that's a consolidated view or whether that's actually a centralized create. All of those steps can come into play, but we need some remediation to allow us to look at the data and understand that we can fix and improve the data and see that effect within the scorecards. The next question will be, can we create a firewall? The first step is obviously to monitor and understand that we've got bad data and how to fix it, but can we put the rules in place to stop the bad data getting into the system in the first place? That could be as simple as performing in the data migration and ensuring your validations and your rules are applied correctly in the migration. It could be a matter of applying additional validation steps within your application integration process using data services and other SAP tools around that, or it could be going as far as implementing SAP's data quality management for SAP applications, where when you're entering customers, vendors or business partners, it's going to highlight where there's a chance this is a possible duplicate, and also highlight where there is a chance that this is an invalid address and standardize the address for you and give you that proposed address to allow you to accept that and move forward. So there are a number of options available for taking that and creating what we would class as a data quality firewall in front of your applications to try and stop the data getting bad rather than monitoring it after it already is past the fact and it's in the system. The final point on this considerations one, and we've touched on it already earlier in the presentation, is the monetary value aspect. If there is no value to the business in resolving that, then there is no point in having a rule. The rule needs to have monetary value. There needs to be the idea of a concept of business ownership. And if it doesn't have a monetary value, i.e. an impact on the business in resolving that quality of that data around that rule, then there will be no ownership. There will be no uptake from the business to resolve the data and improve the process. So there has to be a monetary aspect that can be assigned to that so that it can be monitored and you can show the value add of what the application is doing as part of that process and as part of that scorecarding approach and that monitoring of the trends to ensure that the data quality is improving and it's having a monetary value on the business. So in summary, what we've covered today in this recording and the webinar, we've looked at how poor data quality manifests itself and how that poor data quality gets into your application architecture, whether that's through data migration, application integration, or through data maintenance processes. We've touched on what SAP Information Steward is and specifically focused on the data insight aspect of the Information Steward application, and that's what the demonstration was showing. And then we've talked about the three-step process for kickstarting data governance, and again that was how the demonstration was structured, taking you through the understanding of data facts, creating the rules, and then creating the visualization aspect of that within the scorecard.